Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and I'm here as always with my brother Austin Douglas. How you doing tonight, man?
Fantastic. Hello, everyone.
Tonight, we are bringing you guys kind of the final wrap-up of the last 3 episodes we've released, and these had never intended to be kind of like a mini-series, yet it's somewhat how it's unfolded. This episode is also a part of our Parts Unknown series, where we're diving into Austin's journey in this final, most epic battle he's had facing Hodgkin lymphoma. We talked 2 weeks ago about fear, how you can embrace fear, how you can accept it, and ultimately how you can leverage it to drive you forward, to give you strength when pursuing your impossible. Last week we discussed failure, how you can take failure with gratitude, how you can fail beautifully, how you can accept it as part of the process, welcome it when it comes, because it's a sign that you're truly innovating. You're building a version of yourself who could have or should have never existed. It's a sign that you're chasing goals that are truly beyond your potential, and the person you will build while chasing that potential is the ultimate prize, regardless of the outcome. So we've discussed fear in the anticipation of whatever the event may be. We've discussed failure as the outcome of whatever the event may be. And today, we're going to discuss the concept of pressure. And that is during the moment, in the moment of the impossible, when that weight and that burden is on your back. How are you going to hold it? How are you going to carry yourself in those fleeting seconds that last for eternity? What kind of person will you be? What impossible version of yourself will you put on display for yourself and everyone around you to witness? That is what happens under pressure. Tonight we're going to discuss our thoughts, our beliefs around this, and our strategies for being impossible in these moments of pressure, putting on display that very highest potential and moving one step beyond that. But first, I wanted to open with a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. He says, "The most spiritual men, as the strongest, find their happiness where others would find their destruction, in the labyrinth, in hardness against themselves and others, in experiments. Their joy is self-conquest. Difficult tasks are a privilege to them. To play with burdens that crush others, a recreation." We both loved that quote just for the stark and staunchness that it carries. And obviously it's quite aggressive with a tinge of arrogance as Nietzsche can often portray himself. But I ultimately like the process he unfolds, because it's exactly in alignment with what we discuss and what we chase and what we pursue. Because we all need to get to a point where this pressure, this burden that would break so many people, and maybe even would have, could have, should have broken us, it ultimately becomes a thing of joy, something that we constantly and continually pursue. Not that we're intentionally seeking danger for the sake of danger, but rather that when life throws this pressure at us, when it thrusts it upon our shoulders and upon our back, because it will happen. There is no avoiding it. And when that happens, we welcome it with joy in our hearts. Not that we don't feel fear, not that we don't feel anxiety or apprehension or terror, but that we can have, among all of those other emotions, we can have a sense of joy. For we know this is another opportunity, another impossible that we can face in order to build a version of ourselves who is capable of overcoming it. And that's what I have dedicated my life to chasing. That's what Austin has now dedicated his life to chasing. And that is what our mission and vision at Impossible Performance is, to help build this global culture, all dedicated toward finding that pressure. And when that moment comes that it is upon your shoulders, you will know exactly who you can bring forth. So, with that, I want to turn it over to Austin, because he is tomorrow going to be in that moment of pressure with that weight upon his back.
And in a praise and almost in a welcome sense of Nietzsche's arrogance, I welcome that pressure. The pressure that I'll be facing for this entire week, to slightly detail my calendar for the next few weeks, is I will be going through 6 days in a row of chemo, starting at 0700 every single day. I have to sit there for anywhere from 3 hours to 8 hours, depending on the days, to allow the hospital that's been taking care of me so far to deliver copious amounts of poison into my body, and that poison will ultimately render my body unable to be self-sustainable.
Yeah. Let me provide some quick context to this too, just because this is not just chemo. This is not a regimen designed to kill your cancer and hopefully walk out with a cure. This is literally a lethal regimen of chemo. It is designed to kill him. The doses are so high and the drugs are so intense that this regimen is designed to kill you.
Yes.
And if this is all we did was just these 6 days of chemo, you would die.
Mm-hmm.
It's designed this way because it is going to 100% wipe out every single white blood cell in his body. Every single immune cell in his body will be killed. And without an immune system, you could not survive for long. They do this so that they can then give him stem cells at the end of it, immune system stem cells, which they've already collected from him this week, which will grow him an entirely new immune system. So without the delivery of those stem cells, he would die from this chemo, and it would not take long. This process is essentially a hard reset on your immune system. It's pulling the cord and plugging it back in. And that is a strategy that is used in a few different cases in the world of oncology and battling cancer. Yet this is beyond just a normal chemo regimen already, which is already brutal beyond belief.
Yeah. This
is an immensely new kind of pressure, because all the chemo you've endured before, it was something that there's always that potential that something can go wrong. You could die, but we knew with reasonable certainty you would at least survive the treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just intended to kill the cancer, to kill those bad cells within your body. Yet this is a totally new thing to face and totally new type of pressure to have on your back, because you know that these medications they're giving you, what they're putting you through, is designed to kill you. It is designed to cripple your body to the point that you would die without further intervention.
And yet, with everything that I've faced up until this point, I don't go into this week with a whole lot of concern or worry.
And what allows you to do that?
First of all, and something that I guess I'll have to repeat is the community that we've built. I know that I have the strongest team that a patient could ever have going into this. 2, I have a lot of people to live for. And 3, I have a lot to live for. At the end of the day, I'm just tired of fighting for my life against something that, in my case, in particular, is seemingly unrelenting. And that gives me a challenge. I have the challenge in fighting for my life, but then I have the reason, and that's for the people that I've built around me and that I've been able to put into a circle. They give me the reason and the why. I know the how. Eat clean, drink a lot of water, don't die. That's the how. But the why is the reasons that I've been able to slowly kind of build over these past 3.5 years in total of just general time that I've spent here in the area. And that gives me the reason, it gives me a purpose, and ultimately Impossible Performance is what makes the light at the end of the tunnel so bright that I am not permitting myself in these moments of the, like you said, the pressure that I've never faced before. I've faced chemo in 3.5, 4 separate treatment cycles so far. This will be nothing like those. I've had something somewhat close with the time in Houston. Those were 3 days in a row, but it was on the immunosuppressant chemo. Excuse me. This is immunodestruction reset, like you said, chemo.
Immunodestructive.
So I've had a taste of it, and I know that I can get through it. I know that it's going to not be fun. I know with the arrogance that I prefaced with coming into this does not mean that I'm not clouding the area of this being difficult. I'm just not worried about experiencing the difficulty of of the nature of this beast. I'm not here to get on my knees. I don't get on my knees for any person or anything, and that includes something benevolent inside of me. The best thing that I can do in these moments under this pressure is to stand tall, as firm as I can, knowing that it's not just me that I'm fighting for. It's others in my life that I love so much, and it's the Austin that will be here after all of this. Is why this pressure is. It doesn't weigh less than what one would probably assume. I'm not saying that it's going to be, again, a walk in the park. I'm not concerned about it. I'm not worried.
It doesn't make the burden any less.
No.
But it gives you a greater amount of strength.
The strength is there. We've established wholeheartedly the strength that we have found within the pursuits of challenging ourselves, not only in moments like this, but just in daily life. And so for this to come up, it's a very, very, very grotesque challenge. It's very much a mountain that I have to climb, but I've already seen some of the views that you could get while climbing up that mountain. And so why not get to the peak of it? Yeah. Because I know after this transplant, if and when I defeat this, There's nothing else that's going to stop me in this life.
Do you think you could say that the fear of death does not cripple you because you've already chosen to live?
Yes. Death, a long time ago, death tried very hard and was seemingly unrelenting when I was first diagnosed and in those first few months of treatment. But ever since then, it is because I have found the purpose within Impossible Performance. And again, for those who are around me, the cancer has no control over me other than forcing me to dig the deepest that I've ever dug within myself to find those little bits of remaining strength to get through it. But death was something that I was not overly afraid of to begin with. With life, and some of that was naivety, of course. When you're young, you're willing to go gung ho on everything and it not be a problem because you don't have to worry about it. But also the other part of it was I've experienced so much in my life already that even if death walked up to me and said, "Hey man, we got to go," I'm not going to be too what's the word? I'm not going to fight back so hard. I will fight for him not to make that decision, but if that decision comes, then I'm there, and that's fine. It really is. I don't want to, but if he's there, I'm ready. I've had to be ready. I mean, it's like you said. I mean, the chemo in the past, it's not deathly in terms of its dosage, but if you scrunched it all together, I mean, that's the reason why they space it out, is to kill cancer in some good cells, but not everything. Whereas this here, it's all scrunched up in one time, and it's so much harder of a blow. But I've had to get comfortable with the thought of death over the past 2.5 years. And so there's absolutely no reason for me to be afraid and to be fearful of death at this point. There's also the other part of me now that may have been naive in the past is now saying there's just absolutely no point for me to struggle with that thought. I don't want it, but I'm not gonna be reluctant to go as long as I am aware that I did everything that I could not to die, because I don't want to. That's not the goal. Yeah. So,
well, it's because you've already changed your purpose in life. Like, your purpose is no longer to not die.
Yeah.
As so many people, like, there's so many of us out there that becomes our default purpose. Don't die.
But we all do.
There's nothing more to that. You also can never fulfill that purpose because it's inevitable. Mm-hmm. So then the purpose becomes, well, don't die for as long as possible. But there's still nothing within that, because what do you achieve with that extra time that you have?
You forget to live.
Yeah. And so you've already shifted your purpose to finding your highest potential in the life that you have. And when you truly establish that as your internal purpose that's within your soul, then it doesn't matter how much time you end up having. That, while you want as much as possible so that you can execute that purpose for as long as possible, it essentially becomes irrelevant. Mm-hmm. Because as long as every day you wake up and live out that purpose that you do have, while you do have the time, you can enter death at any time with satisfaction, because you know that you spent as much time as you possibly could have living out that purpose. And when you live out a purpose like that, it is going to have a positive impact on everyone around you. And in that way, that purpose, that legacy lives on so far beyond you. And those people you impacted will impact others, and it causes a ripple effect that will never die. So it's, in a way, it almost transcends death in this life.
And that's the beauty of service that I've become so close to over the years, but then especially now with Impossible Performance. Is service of others. Is that purpose, I think, is something that everybody needs to embrace in some manner and in some form, because it's the most beautiful way to spend your time here on this earth.
I agree with that 100%. And you know what's interesting? I'd never even necessarily had envisioned that we would go in this direction, but I'm glad we did, because there's another Nietzsche quote that I've always held near and dear since the moment I read it. And what's funny is I hadn't even read it until probably the last few months. Like, we have been doing this for years and years and years. I've been, living with this message in my heart for over 10 years now. And then I come across this Nietzsche quote, and he says, "There's nothing more noble than to perish in pursuit of the great and impossible." Which is literally verbatim of something we would say.
Yeah.
And I think the reason he says that is because if that becomes the way you perish, the spirit of which something of that magnitude brings out can never die. It is something that will live on in the hearts of so many others for so much longer than you ever could. Now, caveat to this. Again, it's not that we're urging anybody to go out and put their lives or their health in danger. That's never our mission. That's never our message. Yet, when the pressure of life comes to you, as we've already laid out that it will, what kind of person are you going to be under that pressure? Are you going to be somebody who cripples under it in an attempt to try to escape with your physical mortal life? Or are you going to be someone who stands under it, who holds it up, who bears it, and who ultimately finds an even higher level of potential underneath of it than anyone else could have dreamed possible? And I want you guys to really take a moment and sit with this and think with this. We would never, ever wish for anyone to be in Austin's situation. But I think it's a useful exercise to execute a bit of imagination in this scenario. If you could imagine yourself in his situation, tomorrow morning you have to wake up at 4 a.m., not to go carry the boats and logs like David Goggins, but to go to an appointment where you're going to get the first round of a set of 6 days in a row of chemo that's designed to kill you. You have to wake up. You have to eat food so you don't throw up. You have to drive to the hospital. You have to walk down that long corridor, take a right, and walk into the center that the moment you step in there fills your heart and your soul with apprehension and fear and anxiety and disdain. You have to let them hook you up to a bag of chemotherapy, and you have to sit there in a chair and allow this stuff to run into your veins. This stuff which you know is designed to kill you. And I want us all to sit and think, what kind of person would I be under that level of pressure? And it's okay. Whatever the truth is for you is okay. If you're the kind of person who would immediately cripple and fall apart and not be able to withstand that or hold that up, that is okay. But what needs to happen is, regardless of what the truth of that situation would be for you, just imagining that situation can allow you to take that first or that second or even that third step toward building the person who would be able to withstand this. Mm-hmm. Because I would be willing to guess, and I want your thoughts on this, would the Austin from first occurrence, cycle 1, day 1, have been able to sit down in that chair for what you're about to sit in and endure tomorrow?
No, I would have crumbled under the pressure. I would have been on my knees. I would have curled up into a ball. I would have reacted extremely poorly. I would have placed blame onto others. I would have turned extremely nihilistic, which is something that I fought coming out of university. I fought for a very long time. Now I was a pretty unfortunate person to be around, and if we hadn't have met in 2020 and then really started to form that friendship and partnership in 2021, if that wouldn't have happened, I don't know, it would have been much, much worse for me going into that. And it was already rough. But to think of Austin in 2021, beginning of 2022, facing this, I would be in shambles. I would have cursed everyone and everything. And most certainly I would have taken a lot more serious the prospect of taking my life. Because I was already there for, not necessarily there as in I had felt any motivation to do so, but I found myself in the position where I was comfortable enough to just simply think of where I was in those moments, especially when I was upgraded to Cleveland. That's when it happened. Having to go back home, having to lay in a bed that I didn't want to be laying in, and drive 2.5 hours one way just to continue to be delivered poison. I sat there and I said, I'm not going to do it. But I wonder if this is, for the people that do, is this where they are? Because I can understand. And if I would have had to face a bone marrow transplant at that point, I think those thoughts would have been so much more convincing. And I don't regret admitting to that either. So.
And there's no better real world, real life example of exactly what the process of living out this mission and executing upon this vision can do for you in your life. Because just 2.5 years ago, you were a person who would have absolutely crumbled under this pressure.
Yeah.
And now you sit here with this very real scenario in front of you tomorrow. And not that it doesn't cause fear, not that you aren't concerned about potential failure from it, not that you are excited to have to stand under the pressure of this burden. Yet you can face this impossible knowing the person you've built, and knowing that when you sit in that chair tomorrow in the next 6 days, that person will have an opportunity to be on display for everyone to see, mm-hmm. at a level beyond anything you could have ever dreamed for yourself.
Yeah.
And that person that you've built is ultimately what allows you to do the impossible.
And I feel I can already feel the relief from, I've always tinkered, especially in university, with music. I was able to tinker with the prospect of exposing myself of who I am within moments. But now for the next 3 weeks, nothing will be in a shadow. Nothing will be able to hide behind the tree, hide in the basement, however you want to see it. Everything that is the good, the bad, and the absolutely disgusting of Austin will come out. And I'll certainly try to keep the disgusting parts at bay, and at least not on camera. But an aspect that I do look forward to, and this ties in with the Austin that will be after all of this, is what we'll get to see in those darker moments, because they're going to occur. I'm not going to be able to stop them. But what I am in control of, which ties in with everything about this, is how I react to those moments. The pressure will seemingly darken my viewpoint on life. Not only about the food that I have to eat that day and the water I'm going to have to all consume. I have to look directly into the face of this challenge and say, yeah, I'm here. I'm here, and I very much intend on staying. So,
I couldn't have said it better myself, brother. And I can say personally from my experience of witnessing, particularly this third relapse, it has been one of the greatest honors of my life to witness the growth, the transformation, the strength you've had on display throughout this entire process. Because, I've been an outside observer to where you were 2.5 years ago, which was already a fairly positive place by, most current societal standards.
Yeah. Yet
to see what you've built in the last 2.5 years, even beyond that, what you've created, is, I think, the highest testament to our message and our mission and our vision of what can be done when you create this level of purpose in your life. And it is a real world example to everyone listening, to everyone watching your journey, to everyone following along, of what they can do in their own lives.
Yeah.
And it's not easy as someone who loves you so deeply to have to step back and let you handle this pressure. But I can't tell you the level of comfort and solace it brings me to know that there's not going to be any crippling under this pressure. I know that I'm about to witness a version of you who could not, should not have existed otherwise, an impossible version of you. And while I would never want you to go through this, I would never wish this upon you, I can say that it brings me a great level of solace to know that is what I will be able to witness.
Cheers, man.
Yeah.
And I'm here in this position because of you. So,
well, it's because of all of us and everything we've worked.
It's because of everybody.
Yeah, it's because
it really
of
is.
Everybody that's come together, that's invested in this mission and this message and this mindset, and everyone who's chosen to follow along this path. Because, like we say at the beginning of and end of every episode, this is our purpose. This is what we're striving to build, not just in ourselves, but everyone around us, because we know what this message of Be Impossible has done for us, and we know what it can do for literally everyone in the world. So that is why we do everything we do. And I know you had a couple quotes to kind of close us out here and to wrap everything up, not just for today, but for the last 3 weeks, and to give direction going forward into this next greatest pressure.
And it's a big one but it's one that you can easily implement into your daily life, and one that I've been able to. It's a quote that I read very often, because it's a guiding light for your journey on developing your reaction to external factors. We can't control the majority of external things that happen to us, but we control how we react to them. And I believe that this quote by Seneca is, again, a lot of you have heard it, but it's something that is very profound in very few words. And I personally appreciate that. So it is, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. In my case, I have enough to deal with the reality of the situation. It is benefiting no one, including myself, to suffer from an imagination filled with fear, anxiety, unknowing, and ultimately this really shines a light and helps kind of brighten up what this journey has become and where it's going.
Yeah. Right now there is no the pressure of that reality is not upon you yet. So why put anything extra there beyond what's already going to occur?
So wildly unnecessary for me to do, and for you to do, and for anybody to do.
Yeah.
Like, that is, we already have so much to deal with in daily life in today's society. Things that are so wildly different from decades ago, let alone millennia or centuries and millennia. There's so drastically different of just the evolution that we've had to, and the progression that we've had to embrace in these times. And so I have my purpose, I have my goals, and I have my plan. I don't have any negativity in my head. I know that you've seen me, tearing up here, and that's because I embrace the emotional side of this journey, because that's also something I've been able to accomplish over the time, is just accepting that I experiencing these emotions, and I absolutely let it happen, because I know that reaction is a lot healthier than the majority of reactions that you can have if your mind and imagination are filled up with useless things.
Yeah.
And I have no time for that.
Yeah. Saving that pressure for tomorrow, when the reality of it will occur, gives you a moment of life to cherish today.
Yeah.
And as we've already discussed, you've already transitioned that purpose to live rather than to prolong death.
Yeah.
And so you can live out that purpose today. You can enjoy and cherish these moments today while you have them. And welcome the pressure that is to come tomorrow.
And just look forward to living. So.
Absolutely, brother.
The best of times.
Yeah.
The best of times.
Guys, we want to thank you for being a part of not just this series, not just a part of this podcast, not just a part of this mindset and mission and vision, but for everything you do to live it out in your daily life. We implore you to continue doing so, and more than anything else, to spread it and share it with others. If this episode, though hard to listen to, difficult to imagine, and a great deal of pressure to endure, if it impacted you positively, if you learned something from it, if you grew from it, please hit the share button below this video or this audio, copy the link, paste it into every social media and text message contact you have, and share it with them. Because at the end of the day, that is how we live out. That is how we create. That is how we build and execute our vision at Impossible Performance of growing a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, be impossible. Love you, brother.
Love you too, man. Yeah. I intend on hearing those words again and again.
You absolutely will.
And again.
Absolutely will.